All right, so we're going to talk about email marketing. I'm going to be showing kind of a more of a basic look at things, so some of this might be things you know. I'll try to pepper in some additional information. So one of the things that's nice about email marketing, as we all probably know, is that email marketing is as simple as sending an email. Email marketing really is that simple. We have a to field essentially, which is generally going to be a list because we're sending emails to a bunch of people all at once. We have a subject field, which is basically describing what's in the email, and usually we want to be more descriptive than salesy when we're doing that. Personalization is obviously really important because it's nice when you are told, when someone uses your name in a conversation. Everyone likes to hear their own name. That's usually everyone's favorite word. So that's going to be something that helps people recognize what's going to be in the email and then hopefully open it. And then there's the content that you're needing to deliver, and usually that content, I will say even more than usually, all the time, that content should have some kind of goal that we're trying to get our reader or audience to do. You don't want to be sending these kinds of bad generic emails to your own customers because they're looking at that email trying to figure out what's in it for me. Where's me in this, right? So that's the thing that we need to do when we're sending emails, and I'll talk about that more in just a second. So aside from the fact that it's super easy, it's also pretty cost effective. Generally speaking, the ROI on email is pretty good. So campaigns, when it comes to campaigns, there's a lot of different things that we can use it for, and there's a lot of different types of emails we can send. The core to any email campaign that we're sending is value. That's the number one thing we have to be doing when we're sending emails. We have to be delivering value to our customers. We have to be allowing them to recognize what's in it for them when we're sending these. So there's a lot of different ways we can do that. We can monitor our customer behavior as that's happening. We can try to build our brand. We can keep things really personal. There's just a lot of different elements that can go into all of this. And as I've been saying, I'm going to kind of keep looping around just to kind of keep hitting the same points over and over and over, just so we really are, it's all sticking with us, is that to do email marketing effectively, we have to send information that our audience wants to see. You have to give the people what they want. Have you ever been to a concert and your favorite band doesn't play your favorite song? What's arguably worse? They play your favorite song, but they've been playing it for like 10 years, so they just play it differently, and you're like, oh, no one wanted that, So, but they're the artists, so they get to do what they want, and then they get to complain that you complained and all that, right? You get to argue with people on Twitter now. Isn't that exciting? You get to argue with celebrities on Twitter all the time. You can argue with the president on Twitter right now. That's also pretty exciting, right? So we want to make sure that we're sending good information that people want to see, which follows the second big rule is that we're not spamming people. Because if we're spamming people, we're certainly not creating value, and we're certainly just kind of burning all the goodwill that we've gotten, right? One of my big annoying companies that sends emails like crazy is like Facebook. I've opted out of Facebook messages, I think, 20 times, and I still get them. Pretty annoying, right? So it's you don't want that kind of experience. You want to make sure that you're getting consent when you're sending emails, you're providing value, you're checking in on that. Are we actually creating value? You can even reconfirm people as you keep getting further down. There's a lot of stuff that can go into just making sure that you're creating value and that you're not spamming, right? Because if you're spamming, that means things are going not only into the spam box, but then it's hurting our collective services, and it creates more work on our side to make sure that the different email providers and everybody don't hate us, right? So, and that's a big part of what providing an email marketing service is. It's having good relationships with all these different vendors that they know then that when our customers are sending emails, that they're good quality emails and that they should be trusted and they shouldn't be sent to spam. So we all have to work together to make that happen, okay? For the demo that I'm going to be doing, I'm using a account here that's synced up to one of our demo accounts that we use, which is like a design agency, okay? So they're like a modern design agency that does logos, does product design, does all sorts of different things like that, all right? And the company is called Out of Line Design. So that's the demo account we're working with, all right? Basically what we're doing with this company is we're trying to find a good kind of newsletter that we could be sending out that creates value, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. someone in the audience will say, well, what should I be doing? It's like, I have no idea what you should be doing because I have no idea what business you're in, right? But the main thing is that we need to be creating value. So the newsletter that we're going to do is called In the Loop, which is going to be a email that they send out to their customers and to potentially like prospects that have run into them to share information about how to be a good designer in your everyday life, right? Because if you're hiring a design firm, you're hiring them for big projects like a logo design or for, product packaging, things that you have to, are a big expense and that you're only going to maybe do once or twice a year or something. So to stay top of mind, but then also to keep building their brand as a good design house, they want to build the goodwill to help you with all of the kind of everyday things that you're doing. So that's basically what I'm going to talk about as we're just kind of going through this and looking at some basic things. So basically, one of the most important things when it starts with campaigns is it all really kind of starts with lists, right? So when you come in here for the first time, hey, you don't have any lists, but luckily our fake colleagues in this business are creating plenty of lists, so we can see the kind of emails that we have here. So at the bottom, we see In the Loop, which is our email newsletter that we're sending out. And you notice that we have only about 63 people in there. The reason for this, when you see that we had like a contact list of 800 people or whatever, is because we don't want to always assume that people who are just our contacts or our customers want this email, right? This goes back to that kind of Facebook problem, right? So the way that we do that is we can certainly use that list as a jump start and say, hey, we have a great service that we're doing where we're wanting to help you do all the design and be better at that in your everyday life. Do you want to be a part of this email list? Do you want this content? And if you've marketed well and you've said, done a good job of laying that out for people and presenting the value, they'll opt into it. So having that opt-in of having people in that newsletter list, one, it's going to make sure that you are presenting people with value and that you are sending people the content that they want. Second, it standardizes your actual procedure for that list, right? Because now you have 63 people who definitely want it, and as you keep growing that list, you have people who do want this content and it's growing, in a good, strong, organic way. It's not just a big hodgepodge of people who do want it, people you've tricked to get it, lists that you've bought that you've slammed in there, right? Because as you're sending these emails, how are you supposed to know if the content's working or not? If you're going about it in this way of building these big crazy lists, right? So it's good to actually get that consent. It's good to do the double opt-in. It's good to use the context that you have as a potential jump start, but as a way of jump starting, it's, hey, do you want to do this, right? I think that just kind of makes sense on a very human level of not trapping people into insane things. I always think about it as kind of like inviting someone into your home, right? If you invited someone into your home and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll come inside. That sounds good. But if you were like pushing someone into your house, right, that's kind of like kidnapping, right? And it's kind of like a big problem, right? And once they're in the house, if they're like, yeah, I like it here, but I'm ready to go home, and you then like barred the door, also kind of like kidnapping. So we don't want to do these same practices with email. They're just very kind of like antisocial behaviors, and they're not a good way to build a relationship with someone. So we have our lists here, and as we know, we can create segments within our lists. We can do all sorts of cool things. We can create forms that feed directly into those lists, and we can put those forms on our website. So Marketing Hub is actually built by our campaigns team, and it's basically our big new marketing automation solution, okay? So you're gonna be able to do even more crazy stuff with Marketing Hub. And one of the things that we'll be able to do is really bring everyone in through Marketing Hub directly into that system and make it a really good place to do that kind of marketing automation and move on. You can still do that though with campaigns. So you put the form on your website and you bring them in, you send them some emails, you judge that they're warm, you send them over to CRM. You can totally do that. Of course, you can also have the form in your CRM and you can put that on your website, bring them in as leads or contacts in CRM, and then sync them over, right? So currently you can do that either way. With Marketing Hub, there will be a cleaner line of, do we have the kind of lead volume where we need to be running a lot of, marketing automation journeys and stuff to warm all those people up before their sales ready. So that will really kind of help clarify that, because I know that's usually a point of confusion, right? I'm going off script a little bit and touching on different things because most of you are users already. So I'm trying to anticipate what you might be wondering about and what you might have been confused about. So once we have our lists, which again are really the main piece of our marketing, email marketing operation, we are then gonna send campaigns. And we have a whole bunch of different type of campaigns that we can be sending. And when we do that, it's pretty straightforward. I'm sure many of you have done this quite a bit. So let's say this is gonna be our May newsletter. And we'll put in a subject line that says something like, in the loop, the color, my gosh, issue, right? So again, this is that newsletter we're sending out, and in this issue, we're going to be talking about how to design with color, how to understand color. And so this is something that we can do. We can add the personalization, as I mentioned, where we can simply insert the first name right here, and that will, if we have the leads or the subscriber's first name, we'll be able to put it in right there. You'll notice, though, if you can see that it says first name, there's a line, and then it says customer. But that line basically means or, right? So if first name is not available, if you don't have the person's first name, it's going to put the word customer in there because you don't have the first name, right? So we see that? Yeah? The problem with this is and this is again another tip, make sure anytime you use a merge tag to insert some personalization that you are absolutely certain that you have everybody's information that you're going to be putting into that email, right? Because you're trying to create a moment of personalization, and there's nothing worse than that when that system breaks down and it becomes very robotic and someone says, "Hi, how are you? We love you, customer," right? It's not great. I mean, we all kind of, I think, on a deeper level know that it's all machines doing this and these companies don't really know our name, but that's the matrix we're living in, right? So it's one of those things that people like that, and then, to a varying degree, but they really hate it when it breaks down. So if you can't do personalization confidently, don't do it, right? I mean, marketing and branding and all that is not always like a zero-sum game, right? I mean, it can vary wildly, right? You try to do something, it doesn't go well, it can go bad, it can set you back, right? So, and then of course, arguably the most important part of this entire app. I think you know where I'm going with this. Those little emojis. Hell yeah. We're gonna put that little devil guy in there, right? So then it comes to sender. So what's the best practice for senders, right? I mean, because sometimes, you don't actually want it to appear that it's coming from your account manager, right? You want to create that division so that they're building a relationship not only with the people, but then also with the brand itself, right? So someone they know. And that can be a person, and you can test that and do a whole bunch of different things. You can kind of build on your website that maybe, that out of line is really run by a girl named Amanda. And Amanda's always prevalent in all this content. Whether or not there's an actual Amanda, who knows, right? But you can try to create that kind of relationship on a personal level, but you can also just tie it back to the brand. Some people might say, oh, well, the sender is going to be in the loop. That's the newsletter that they signed up for. But then they might say, well, it's the company name. And, we go by OOL all the time, out of line. But will people know OOL versus out of line? That's always the kind of the game we're playing. So we want to maybe just say out of line or out of line, because that is, what people are probably going to are knowing the best, right? So we can do reply tracking, all sorts of different things, different reply to addresses, so that way that if someone does reply, the right person is getting it. We can do all that good stuff. So now we can go ahead and go in and pick our template. One of the things that I think can be done to make the pre-designed templates a little better or a little more interesting, because sometimes when you come in here and you say, yeah, there's thank you, that's great. There's a bunch of holiday emails. These are just kind of just samples. And really the thing to pay attention to, just as a tip that I've kind of taken, is just the layout of them, right? Because it doesn't really matter what the content is exactly. If you like the layout, that can actually be a good jump start to getting something done, because then you can go in there, swap out the Christmas image with something that's relevant to the month of April, right? I don't know what that would be, but you have that kind of jump start. So that's a way to kind of make better use of the templates, because it can sometimes be a little off-putting to see there's all these things and you're like, yeah, Happy New Year. Can't use that, it's April, right? So that's something that you can think about. They're updated fairly often. I mean, like we'll put new ones in as much as we can. Like it says right here, new thank you templates added. So those have just been added, right? One of the things I'll do though is just use a template that I've saved from the past. And that's again, another really good thing to do. You can save things you're using regularly as a template. Aside from the fact that it just speeds up the design process, it also just ensures consistency across your emails so that things always look the same. Because it can be kind of disorienting if you're always opening a different email that has a completely different look, a completely different feel. It also makes it hard to figure out what part of the email needs to be improved, right? So if you decide on a general structure, okay, we're gonna put our brand logo at top, we're gonna have a headline, we're gonna put some text, we're gonna have our call to action, you can work with that for a while and try different elements within that to see if you can get better engagement. Does this make sense? If you're changing everything all the time, you have no idea what's causing the problems or what's going well, right? So you need those dependent variables in your content to experiment with. A lot of times, you're guessing and checking when you just start out, but you need to kind of pick a path based on your research, based on your assumption, based on the emails that you've seen work that you like. And generally, larger brands are putting a lot of money into figuring out what's working for them. So it's totally okay if you say, hey, I see a certain style that seems to be very prevalent right now. We're going to use that style because there has to be a reason that these 3 Fortune 500 companies are doing them this way, right? So that's a good way to just kind of, just take something that you're getting for free there, and then of course, put your own brand on it, do your own content, but that can help just jumpstart, what you're doing. So this is an example of that consent campaign that I talked about earlier, where we had a big list of customers in our CRM, but we wanted to make sure that they really wanted this content first. So what we did is we send them an email that has the In the Loop logo, and we say, it's not every day we get to work with you, but chances are you're doing stuff every day that involves design. We'd love to help you with those projects too, right? And you have a little call to action that's cute. Let's make things pretty. Aw, right? Such a great brand, So this is a good example of just that consent campaign, which can help figure out if people actually want this. And now, now that we know that we're actually doing the color issue for this, we can use this and say, color, blah, blah, blah. I'm not gonna actually make all this in front of you. I'm not actually working for this company here. We can add this headline, and then just push it up to the top pretty easily, because I'm not good at the trackpad on this, because I'm not used to the settings. And we just move it to the top. I promise campaigns is better than that. This is just me fumbling with a computer I don't use, and we can call it the color issue, and very quickly, go ahead and put it in the middle. That looks better. We can go ahead and add an image, all that kind of stuff, right? And one of the things that we'll want to do, even if we're sending a newsletter, is we need to, again, think about what are we trying to get the customer or the person receiving this email to do, right? That's always something we have to think about, because creating actions for them to do is a way we can measure the success of what we're doing, right? So always giving someone the next step, it's a way of not only aligning whatever your email newsletter is into your larger marketing strategy, but it's a way then to see how effective things are going. If I'm sending emails and I'm only asking people to open and there's no calls to action in there, then how do I know that people are enjoying the content, right? I kind of don't, right? If I send an email and I have 7 links that all are visually of the same importance, do I want someone to click any one of those, or do I want them to click one of those? Which is the hierarchy that I'm prioritizing for them, right? When you get like an email from like the New York Times or like the New Yorker or some kind of media outlet or something, generally speaking, you'll have a whole bunch of links that look the same and are not prioritized. And that's because they really don't care which one you click. As long as you go back to the website, you're engaging with them, maybe you're a subscriber of theirs, that you're making money on ad revenue. So any push to their website, they're happy. But if you're trying to get them, your customer, to do a specific thing, a part of your strategy, you have to build that into the email itself. And you don't want to make it too confusing for your viewer, right? So if we're doing this newsletter, one thing we can do is just tease, maybe a couple pieces of that and maybe link back to the website, right? Maybe if we're just looking for any kind of engagement and we don't want to feel like we're being underhanded and just directing them to a blog, we can put the whole content in there, but we can list a whole bunch of links in there. So that way, if we're seeing that people are clicking the links, we know that they're reading, we know that they're opening, and that would be fine for, I think, this letter, right? The question was, you said, if you've been spending this time about opting in, you should also have a place in here that you can opt out, right? And that's a really good point, and it's actually something that's mandatory if we're following spam law, which is a real thing. It kind of sounds like it's a fake thing. It sounds kind of like your permanent record, right? But it actually is a real thing, and it does determine the effectiveness of our services and everything. So at the bottom, we do have this unsubscribe button. And, I'll say personally, I don't think you need to make unsubscribe buttons super big and prevalent, because you don't want to work against yourself too much. The main thing is that they work when someone clicks it. Because we know they're at the bottom, we know they're small, that's okay. If we want out, we can click it, and as long as it actually removes us from the list, totally fine, So I don't think you have to make unsubscribe buttons super prominent. You can keep them small, you can de-emphasize them, but just make sure that when people do go through that action that it works. So that's that. We'll then go ahead and add this to the lists. Again, if you're using an account with multiple people and all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, where's my list? Just that little tab up there. It says my lists, other lists, all lists. That'll be something that's good to have. You can see our segments appear right here. So if we're creating segments to target different people or different types of people within a list, we can do that. But the in the loop one is the one we want. Makes that cool little animation. Nice touch, Sam. And we can hit next, and then we'll be able to schedule our campaign or send, right? Sending, when you go to send, you'll be hit with that message, send in for review, right? So what you'll see this thing about sending for review. That's basically us just making sure you are spam compliant, you have an unsubscribe link in the footer of your email. That's all we're checking for. It just takes a couple seconds or a couple minutes, let's say. And then after that's done, you're ready to send. You can schedule later. Then there's also send in batches. So, basically when you have a bunch of contacts that you're sending to, you want to create those batches so you're not overloading the email providers with a bunch of emails that they may or may not be recognizing, right? So you have tons of emails. It's good to batch those out and make sure that you're sending out some at a time, some at a time, some at a time, right? It's just a cautious way to make sure your emails are delivered, and it helps improve email deliverability that way, okay? All right, so that's all I'm going to show for now, okay?